Hello everybody! I recently finished Red Faction for the first time and I have to say I was blown away, not only by the game itself, but also by the community. After 24 years, the community is still highly active, not only in the player sense, but also they are still developing content for the game. And I knew I just have to talk to one of the admins. So I say hello to Goober. How are you doing?
Hi, I'm doing great.
As always, I'm very curious about the persons I'm interviewing. So before we start with Red Faction, the main topic here, I would like to know a little bit about yourself.
Sure. So, let's see where to start. Yeah, my name is Goober. Well, my name is Chris, but everybody online knows me by Goober. I'm from the Canadian province of Newfoundland and Labrador. I've been playing Red Faction now for, let's see, I started playing the game, I think 2 or 3 weeks after it first came out in September of 2001. So it's been a little while. I guess outside of Red Faction, I like a lot of other FPS games. Team Fortress 2, I've played a ton of that. I also really enjoy both playing and creating card games and board games and that sort of stuff. And I'll say I work in the tech industry, and I'll leave it at that. But yeah, that's basically me.
And then, of course, the question of the day, how did you get into Red Faction?
So, it's not really a magical story or anything. I was very young at the time. My dad built a computer for us. He got a copy of Red Faction, installed it. Before I started playing Red Faction, I'd really only ever played Commander Kane and Chip's Challenge and Windows Solitaire and all of those random kinds of computer games. But Red Faction was my first kind of, I'll put air quotes around real game, let's say. And I basically just started playing it because my dad got it and thought it was cool. That's that's really the long and short of it.
So you got it really at release back in 2001?
Yeah, I didn't have it exactly at release. There were also demos that were released of Red Faction before the game's release. So, there are people out there who have been playing it longer than me. There are people out there who have been playing it ever since the demos. I started playing 2 or 3 weeks. It's almost 25 years ago. I can't remember the exact dates, but 2 or 3 weeks after release was when I picked it up. Back then, that was a wild time for the Red Faction community. I was also a lot younger, obviously, but it was a wild time for the Red Faction community, for gaming communities, the internet in general. I think back on the way it was back then. Like I said, I was very young, so I would, get up at 6 o'clock in the morning before school, play a bit of Red Faction. I'd leave open a server on my computer the whole day while I was gone to school. When I come home, there'd be, 30 people in it playing, and then I'd hop on for a couple other hours before I go to bed. So, you don't do that now for a lot of different reasons, but, that's just the way things were back then. And it was, I don't know, it's really interesting to think about how different things are now versus the way they were then.
They were quite different. Did you have a modem connection, or did you have a kind of broadband already?
No, see, I'm going to count myself among the few Red Faction players back then who never actually played Red Faction on dial-up. I will say Red Faction was built when dial-up was very common, so, it was built with dial-up in mind. But I had, by modern standards, very slow, but by those standards, relatively quick broadband, cable, internet back then. So I could support hosting a server with 30 people in it. I'm not going to say it worked particularly well, especially by modern standards, but it was usable.
Those were the days. I remember the dark ages with a 20 kilobit modem. It was challenging. I couldn't imagine playing something like this really via a standard modem connection. The dial-up is luckily long gone.
Yeah, so I had used dial-up connections before Red Faction came out, obviously, and so I knew what it was like. And as recently as, I'm going to say 2006, 2005, 2006, something like that, there were a handful of Red Faction players who I would talk to regularly who were still using dial-up. And, you'd have them on MSN Messenger or something, and they'd be offline for most of the day because, I mean, on dial-up, you don't want to be connected to the internet constantly. It was very, very different. And like I said before, like it's interesting to me to think back to the way things were, even if not for me, for a lot of people back then versus now, where not only is it unheard of for your internet connection on your computer to ever drop, but every one of us is walking around with a phone in our pocket that has a constant connection to the internet. Yeah, no, it's a completely different time. It's very interesting.
To be honest, I never checked when was the last time it was even possible to use a dial-up connection.
I'm pretty sure it's still possible in some areas of the world. I mean, I know where I'm from, probably 10 years ago. I can't even actually remember the reason, but I can remember being in a room with someone when they dialed in for internet, and that was probably 2011, 2012, something like that. So like, it's fairly recent that it's available. Now, whether you'd want to use it if you had another choice is another matter, but yeah.
It would be crazy, definitely. But going, of course, back to Red Faction, yeah, why do you still play it after so many years? What keeps you in it?
That is a very good question. And I mean, I'll talk about a couple of things, but I guess the essence of it is I don't have a really good direct answer to your question. But a couple of things that I would say is, I've made probably my closest friends on the internet through this game. The community, I mean, every community has, its ups and downs, and, there's a tad bit of drama here and there. That's every online community. But, like, by and large, the community built around this game is absolutely fantastic. And, we've had plenty of people come into the Red Faction community from other gaming communities and remark on how, compared to other communities they've been in, our community is, well run, fairly run, relatively little drama, people tend to get along, those sorts of things. I mean, like I said, nothing's perfect. There are, hiccups every now and again, but it's a pretty common occurrence to hear people talk about how different the Red Faction community feels from other communities that they've been in. And while I'm not personally as intimately involved in other communities as I am with Red Faction, it says a lot when that is not a rare comment to hear from people. I guess in terms of the game itself, I'd say that the accessibility is probably the biggest thing for me. A lot of, especially modern games, they're kind of kludgy. Like, I love Steam in general, but like most games on Steam, it's very difficult to just, launch the game and in 2 seconds be into a server playing with whoever's online. Or, just copy and paste files from a game onto your laptop and just start playing the game there. Like the game is so much more accessible than a lot of other games, and so is the ability to modify it and to edit it. Like the Red Faction level editor, there are a lot of people who have complaints about the camera style and stuff, because it is very, I mean, the game was built a quarter of a century ago. Like it's very old school, but it's still very accessible. Like you can just jump into the editor, and as long as you know the control scheme, like you can start making a pretty impressive looking map in like an hour. Like that's kind of unheard of when it comes to, the modability of modern games. So that's kind of my brain dump on that. I mean, like I said, I don't have a really good answer for why specifically I still play it, but I love it. I love the community. I love the game, and that's that.
In general, it amazed me that there is still such a huge server out there, Discord-wise. I know many old titles, and it's rare to find a game which has over 1,000 players on it, or users in that case.
Right. I'm not going to leave illusions. Like there are obviously inactive users on the Discord, and there are obviously, a lot of people who just hang out because they like talking about the game and they're not playing it daily or whatever. Like I'm not going to say that we have thousands of users online every day or anything like that. I mean, it is still a almost 25-year-old game. But yeah, I mean, the size of the community is pretty remarkable. We started Faction Files, the website, myself, Natalie, and Nick. We started the website back in 2009. We started the Discord in 2018, and at the time that we started the Discord, activity in the community was not near at the level that it is now. Like, I'm not going to call it dead, but compared to now, it was dead. You know, there were a handful of people making maps. There weren't a ton of people playing, but we started the Discord in 2018, and it only really took a couple of months, I think, for, you know, it to become kind of like the central gathering place for people in the community, because, you know, there had been Skype groups before and forums and all this kind of stuff that every community has, but like this was the first time that the entire community had like a platform that, I'm not going to say everyone, but basically everyone knew about, and it was accessible to them, and you could just kind of talk about stuff. You know, you could, if you were making a map, you could sit in voice chat and screen share and talk with other mappers about what you were doing. If you wanted to hop on a deathmatch pub and, you know, play some games, you didn't have to like post on a forum and schedule a time or go to the Skype group and hope that somebody happened to have Skype open or whatever. You could just like post in a channel and be like, hey, if anyone's online, you want to play a game. So I don't know that it's unique because I don't know that much about other communities, but it's definitely cool. It's definitely something I'm a huge fan of.
It's interesting that you mentioned that. In my experience, I'm one of those guys who always hits the limit on how many servers you can join on Discord. And my experience is it's much worse compared to forum and Facebook groups and all that stuff, because yeah, nobody reads often the messages there. It's just a steady flow of messages, and messages like, hey, I want to play a game. Yeah, they just are swallowed by everything else. It's interesting that it works here.
Yeah, and I mean, fair enough. And there's obviously some of that too. I'm not going to say that, you know, somebody goes on and says, hey, you want to play a game, and every single time they get people to play with. But you know, I think it helps the way that we've organized the channels and the roles in the Discord. Like, we have matchmaking channels for every game in the series that has multiplayer, and those get used for that purpose. The most common, I think, case that I can think of where people come on and look for people to play with and just kind of leave empty-handed and never get to play is, you know, when you get a handful of people coming on saying like, hey, I'm looking to play Red Faction Guerrilla on PlayStation 5. Anyone want to play with me? And it's just like, you know, there are probably like 5 people who play Red Faction Guerrilla on PlayStation 5 online on the face of the earth. They're probably all in the Discord, but, you know, the chances of them reading your message are relatively low. You don't generally have that problem with RF1.
Good to hear that it isn't here the problem, but yeah, it's a constant problem for me with Discord. Somebody in the chat mentioned it. He prefers Discord compared to forums. I'm the other way around. I have the problem with Discord. It's gated. You have to, you need basically an account to use it. You often can't find Discord servers. It's hard to get into it, but I'm always amazed if a server is doing it right and it just works for the community.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's probably not for everyone, probably not for every community, but for us and for this community, yeah, it's worked out very well.
And was there a catalyst basically which gave you a huge push in players, maybe a release on Steam or GOG?
You know, thinking back, and I mean, I am thinking over 2 decades of history in my head, so it's possible I'm going to miss something, but when Red Faction released on Steam, if I remember correctly, that was either just before or just after Red Faction Guerrilla released in 2009. I didn't personally notice a bump, and it's probably largely because the game, if you buy it on Steam, is just totally broken. You need to go get community patches to be able to play it, which is hilarious. But anyway, the big thing, if I had to point to one thing recently, actually no, I'll point to 2 things. So back in 2019, we started an event that runs bi-weekly and is still running now, called Red Faction Game Night. And that has been tremendously successful. You know, people come out every second Saturday and we all play games together. And I mean, you know, sometimes you have a light night and you get 10 people. Other times you have a particularly heavy night and you get 25, 30 people. So it varies, but it's always a good time. We started that in 2019, and then I'm sure I don't need to remind anybody what happened in 2020. The pandemic, as awful as it was for everyone, for very obvious reasons, for Red Faction and for the state of the community, it was a huge boon because, it's a game that a lot of people loved back in the day and maybe haven't played in 10, 15, maybe 20 years. And suddenly they're all stuck at home and they can't go outside and they're looking for things to do. A lot of people went back to this game from their childhood and came on and were just like, whoa, there's still people playing this game? Like, wow, okay, I'm going to play with you guys. I'm going to make maps with you guys. Whatever. So during the pandemic, Red Faction, the community, was, I'm going to go out on a limb here because I don't have actual statistics to support this, but just based on my feel, was probably at a more active state than it's been since like 2005, 2006. There were just so many people. And I mean, that has died off a little bit as, people have gone out of their houses because they now can. And, it's died down a little bit, but it's still a lot higher than activity in the community is still a lot higher than it was before the pandemic. So it's really cool that at least some percentage of those people have stuck around. So I guess those are the two big things that I'd point to.
Sorry, just answering the chat.
Yes, can we convert you to play Red Faction multiplayer? Yes,
let's
do that.
Going to that,
I will extend a cordial invite to yourself and anyone watching this stream or watching this video later to come and play Red Faction game night with us.
I host basically every Wednesday an event called Noob Night, where I always switch games.
Oh, cool.
Basically, totally off topic here, not about Red Faction here. My greatest enjoyment in games in recent years is playing relaxed, just random, a match against bots, something easy, or having a game which I totally know and just play it against a friend casually. I don't need hardcore PvP action. From time to time, that's also amazing. I love Unreal Tournament and Counter-Strike and Elite Force, so I'm into that also, but it's not so relaxing more in my age. I'm sounding old, sorry guys.
No, I mean, I get it. Sometimes you just want to chill out and play video games, and I mean, that's totally cool. And I mean, not to, co-opt your sentiment there, but like, that's kind of what Red Faction Game Night has always been. Like, it's not a competitive event. It is a casual event. It's not, obviously there's a score. It's literally a competitive game by definition, but like, no one cares who wins. It's just, a bunch of people playing games with their friends and, for new people, hopefully people who will become friends.
Absolutely. I'm coming from the LAN party era of gaming. I love that. Still do.
Oh, I hear you. I love that era. I miss that era too.
Yeah, it's so hard to managing a time schedule for a LAN party with friends today. It's crazy.
It is. It's also just so much more convenient over the internet because I remember back, 15 years ago, lugging my computer and monitors over to your friend's house and staying up all night, and then the next day is totally a write-off. It's a lot easier just to spend 4 hours playing Red Faction online on a Friday night.
It is, but you have to consider how much lighter the monitors, the screens are today. It's unbelievable how much weight we carried around.
That is true. Plus, to be honest, if I was going to go to a LAN party today, I think I'd just take my laptop.
That's also true. We have also that technology now. But yeah, going back to Red Faction, of course, I always ask my guests, what are your favorite items in the game, features, locations, stuff like that?
Yeah, okay. I mean, so okay, let's take it this way. So I'll say favorite weapons. Single player, hands down, flamethrower. It is the coolest flamethrower in any game that I have ever played. It sets people on fire. It pops nanotech shields in a fraction of a second, which is the coolest thing in the world. And I'm not sure if you were aware of that, by the way, because I watched your playthrough and you didn't take the shortcut to kill K-Pek and Masako with that. But yeah, I mean, the flamethrower in single player is the best thing ever. In multiplayer, I'm going to go on the record and say that both the rail driver and the precision rifle are unbelievably overpowered weapons, but my favorite weapon in the multiplayer would be the submachine gun. And I say that not because it's the most powerful, but because it is comparably powerful to the heavy machine gun and the assault rifle. A little bit weaker, but it's comparable. But in most maps, it's placed in safer, more accessible locations, whereas the heavy machine gun and the assault rifle and the rail driver and the PR and all these kinds of things are placed in more dangerous locations that you have to fight for. It's usually extremely easy to get your hand on a submachine gun and very effective. So, yeah, I'd say those are my favorite weapons. In terms of locations, I mean, in the single player, I always loved the geothermal power plant. That was always my favorite section of the single player, just because it was one of the few. You know, I'm not going to say that the Red Faction single player campaign is a miraculous example of what games could be. You know, it's campy. It's got its issues. But the geothermal plant was one of those sequences that I thought was extremely well executed. You know, you really feel like you're doing something valuable within the universe and within the world, whereas, you know, you don't really feel that way when you're just kind of like running down a canyon, you know, shooting random people that happen to come out from behind rocks for some reason. But the geothermal plant was really, really well scripted. It was well thought out. It just felt absolutely fantastic. Multiplayer maps, I mean, there have been literally thousands of custom multiplayer maps made, so I'm not going to go into those. But talking about the stock multiplayer maps, I mean, there's a few. I'm a Red Faction player, so I think by law I have to say Warlords, just because that is just objectively the best Red Faction default map. But in terms of deathmatch, I always really liked DMO2 installation. I always really liked Anyway, DM10. A lot of people are going to make fun of me for this, but I always really liked Coffee Break, DM14. Despite the fact that that map is absolutely horrible, it's awful, but for some reason I always liked it. I'm not going to say I liked the gameplay, but I liked the map. So yeah, those are weapons and locations. Was there anything else you asked for my favorite on? I can't remember.
For example, in-game features.
I mean, I'll say as a somewhat novel concept, I always really liked the concept of the rail driver thermal scanner. That was it's not something that is unique to Red Faction. There are other games that have similar features than that, or to that. But I always thought that was cool. I mean, I have to say the Geomod engine, just because that's the main reason most people played Red Faction, and it is really cool. I think, honestly, that may be something that I don't fully appreciate because I grew up playing the game. You know, it's not something that is special to me the way that it would be to somebody who had never played the game before. You know, when I think about designing a deathmatch arena, it just kind of comes natural to me to think about what happens when you destroy walls. Probably doesn't come so natural to someone who's used to mapping for Doom. So yeah, but I mean, it is really cool. So
you mentioned something there. Did you ever create custom content
for Red Faction?
Yep.
Oh yeah, I've created probably way too many maps, a lot of mods. I'm currently working on the Alpine faction patch. Yeah, I've made a lot of content for this game. Is there anything in particular you wanted to go into? Because I could probably talk all day about those things.
No, I just wanted to know in general if you did some modding here. And yeah, I just read in the chat basically what you haven't created for Red Faction. You had your fingers, I guess, in everything. Not bad.
I'm not going to say that I've done everything well, because it would be pretty big-headed of me to say that, but like I've tried basically everything.
Being at that subject, how easy is it to get into modding and mapping here? Are there many guides? I saw you have a wiki, but how easy is it basically for a noob to go into it?
So again, it's one of those things where it's difficult for me to have an unbiased perspective on that, because I literally grew up with this game. The level editor, I think, is user-friendly and is straightforward to get into, but again, I would say that. I have heard from people who have tried to pick it up who are used to other types of engines that have definitely not found that to be the case. I will say, when it comes to the level editor, one of the biggest issues I think a lot of people have is that Red Faction the way the geometry is done in Red Faction is very unlike most modern games. I don't know how much you're aware of on like game design and stuff, but virtually every modern engine, you start with an empty world and you know build a world for your gameplay to take place in. In Red Faction, probably mostly due to the way the Geomod engine works, to be honest, it's the opposite. You start with a completely solid world, and every map is effectively a cave. And I think just like flipping that logic can be difficult for people to map their head around, or to wrap their head around. Again, it's not a problem that I have because I've always thought of it that way. I have a problem going the other way. I have a problem when I go to engines that start with an empty world. But yeah, I mean, old Unreal Engine games used to do geometry in a similar way, but even the new Unreal Engine versions don't. So I don't know any other games out there nowadays that do geometry the way that Red Faction does. So I think that that could be a bit daunting for people to get into. I will say in general, like, I think that our wiki does at the very least an okay job of providing guides and that sort of stuff to help people out. Also, we talked about our Discord earlier. I'll say that the workshop channel in our Discord is the place where anybody can go and ask any questions. And quite literally, if there's anyone on the face of the earth that has an answer to your Red Faction modding questions, they're watching that channel. So, we all help each other that way. But yeah, I think that getting into level editing for this game in particular can be a bit daunting for people who are used to level editing in more modern engines, because it's very, very different.
Sadly, you say something which is a thorn in many players or modders' back. There aren't any level editors for modern games. At the top of my head, I don't know any game which offers mod or map support in a shooter sense.
Fair enough. That is a huge shame, but yeah, true.
One other thing I noticed is that the community created two different, how to phrase it, wrappers or ways to play the game. The Alpine faction and the Dash faction. I know there is a page basically which tells you the difference between those two, but maybe you can tell the audience also what is the difference.
So, I mean, I'll be clear up front that I can't talk in an unbiased way about this, because Alpine faction, I'm the project lead for Alpine faction, so obviously I have a bit of bias there. But I guess just on a factual basis, Dash faction is a open source Red Faction patch developed by a Polish programmer named Rafal. I can't remember actually when work started on that, but I believe the first release was in 2016. So it's been going for a while. It resolves a lot of issues with the game, fixes a lot of the security issues that the game has always suffered from. It adds, modern features like widescreen support and window modes and all those sorts of things. It does a lot of great work, and it's, it's opened a lot of doors to mod developers and that kind of stuff over the years. Alpine faction is a project that I started back 6 months ago, 5 months ago, I don't know, it all blurs together, something like that. And Alpine faction is a fork of the Dash faction repository. So essentially it has all of the open source features that Dash faction has, plus a lot more. So I guess just as some examples from a single player perspective, like Alpine faction adds like the ability for enemies to explode into gibs when they die from explosive damage. It adds like a flashlight that players can use, fixes some additional bugs. It opens up a lot of doors for custom content creation. Like, it adds a lot of features to the level editor, and a lot of features for mod developers to access settings within the game that they didn't have access to before, and those types of things. And it also adds a lot of additional functionality for multiplayer, like some things that server operators can do on their servers that they never could do before, additional graphics enhancements and those sorts of things. I'm actually currently in the process of working on the next version of Alpine faction that also adds a lot of additional, I'll say, more like modern features to the game, like features that you might expect from modern games the Red Faction's never had before, like a radio messages menu, and those sorts of things. So just, yeah, kind of in a nutshell, that's the difference between Alpine faction and Dash faction.
Okay, sounds totally like Alpine faction is the way to go here for the multiplayer community also. Or is there not a problem in cross playability?
No, I mean, I would never recommend anyone play the multiplayer for Red Faction without either Dash Faction or Alpine Faction. And I say that because there are some pretty serious security vulnerabilities that exist in the base game. Not going to blame Volition's developers too much for that. They were making a multiplayer game, like I said, about a quarter of a century ago. Things have changed on the internet a lot since then. But, Alpine Faction, Dash Faction resolved the vast majority of the security issues in the game, and those fixes benefit both Dash Faction and Alpine Faction. There are some features that are in multiplayer that you won't be able to take advantage of unless you're using Alpine Faction, that Dash Faction doesn't have access to. But in general, unless those features are used, you can play multiplayer together between Dash Faction and Alpine Faction.
Okay, then I had a different problem, I guess, because I used the Dash Faction to play the game, and I couldn't connect to the multiplayer servers. I thought, hey, maybe it's because I didn't use the Alpine Faction.
Yeah, unless you were trying to join like the competitive multiplayer servers, those enforce Alpine Faction, but unless you were trying to join those, that shouldn't be that problem. My guess is that my guess is that you don't have the tracker set up properly in the properties. If you go into options in Alpine or Dash Faction and hit the reset button under multiplayer tracker, it'll set you to the community tracker, and then you should be able to see servers then.
Oh, good to know.
We can follow up on that after if you have trouble. I can give you a hand.
That I would definitely like, but let's go also into the direction of what would you basically tell a new player what he should do the first time he starts the game and goes into the multiplayer later?
Well, so first off, very, very, very important. Like I said, I would never recommend anyone to play the game, especially in multiplayer, without Dash or Alpine Faction. Obviously, I have a bias towards Alpine Faction. I think the experience would be a bit nicer because you have access to more features. But from a security perspective, either is fine. But outside of that, definitely play game night. The multiplayer is awesome anyway. You can hop on. There are, people who play most every day. There are bots that you can play with if nobody is online. But game night is by far the most active time for the game's multiplayer. And it has been as long as we've been doing game night, which is over 5 years now. So, if you want to get into playing Red Faction multiplayer, I invite you to join our Discord. I invite you to participate in our game night events. You don't need to be intimidated. Honestly, the community is extremely welcoming to newcomers, more so than I think a lot of other gaming communities. And all you need is Dash or Alpine Faction, and you can just join the game night server, hop in voice chat with us if you want to, but you don't have to. You can just play, and that's what I'd recommend for multiplayer for sure.
And is it a hard or a steep learning curve for new players? Basically, can they survive in a multiplayer night?
I mean, in any game, especially like a classic shooter game, you're going to have a bit of an uphill battle playing against people who have been, honing their skills for 2 decades plus. But I mean, in general, a lot of Red Faction's multiplayer, or the effectiveness of Red Faction's multiplayer, comes down to aim. So, if you're good at playing Counter-Strike or Quake or something, like some FPS game, you're going to do at the very least okay. I'm not saying you're going to win, but you're going to do at the very least okay, after you basically learn how the weapons work and what they are and that sort of thing.
So there is still a chance for a noob.
No, there totally is. I mean, we ran some tournaments back a couple of years ago, and actually, when we ran a duel tournament, the grand final came down to one player who had been playing the game for, I don't know exactly, I'm going to guess 15, 16 years, and another player who actually is a friend of mine in real life who had been playing the game for about 3 weeks. So, if you can play games well, you can play Red Faction well.
That's good to hear. Because in arena shooters, it's sometimes difficult because there are power-ups. If a long-time player knows exactly when the items respawn, where they are respawning, yeah, they will wipe the floor with you. But I don't think it's the case here. It's, more aiming thing.
Yeah, I mean, there's obviously some of that. Like, there are power-ups, but like, the Red Faction damage amp, which is a quad damage power-up, like it's very obvious what it is. Like, you pick it up, you glow purple. Like, it's not like it's a secret, and it's very obvious where it spawns. It's usually in the center of the map. I guess there is a bit of a learning curve with regard to how the armor works, because it's a bit different than a lot of other games. You need to, in order to play extremely effectively anyway, you need to kind of learn where the armor pickups are in maps and like kind of cycle between those positions. But like, as a casual game, like if you want to come play game night or whatever, like that's not really a thing. Like, if you wanted to get into playing it competitively, you'd need to care about those sorts of things, but just to like hop on game night, you don't really need to care. Like, shoot the guy who's shooting at you, especially if he's purple, and avoid him if he's blue, because then he's invulnerable. Like, other than that, you can play game night.
I just wondered, during those game nights, are you playing most of the time deathmatch or all game modes?
We go back and forth. I mean, most of them are deathmatch because that's the most accessible, and I think what most people have more fun with. But we also do CTF nights, every now and again. We also, I'll say, we really try at game nights to showcase newly released maps. And I don't know how common this is in other super old games, but like, Red Faction still has new maps being released at least weekly. Like, just literally earlier today, 2 veteran mappers were posting screenshots of maps that they're working on in our workshop channel, literally today. And, I don't know how common that is, but, maps are still released fairly often. So at game night, we always try to, like, usually the first or the second game night after a map is released, we always try to include it in the map pack that we run that day to kind of give it exposure, make sure that we incentivize people to keep making content for the game, because they know that at the very least it's going to be played once. Probably more than that, but at the very least they know it's going to be played once. Like, if you spent all this time making a map, you're going to be able to play it with people. We'll ensure that. So it's kind of a bit of a motivation for mappers.
Yeah, that's, like I tried to mention in the beginning, it's very unique that you have here a shooter from 2001 which still gets community maps on a regular basis. That's unbelievable. I'm a game hopper, a retro game hopper, and yeah, I can't remember any game which does this today. Nice, it's really nice.
That's honestly another one of those things where I'm almost sad that I don't have more personal experience in other gaming communities, because I'm not sure I fully realize how unique that is. Because it's normal for me. It's awesome, don't get me wrong, I love it, but I don't really know how common that is. And also, I'm looking at the chat. I would completely reiterate what Nick said there. Red Faction is different to most other arena FPS games. You can drop in and play really quickly. Like, the mechanics are not hugely complicated. You can drop in and play with people. Like, yeah, competing against people who have been playing the game for 20 years on your very first time you join a server might be a little challenging, but like, it's nothing compared to like Counter-Strike, for example, where the learning curve is enormous.
And the good thing here is it's more or less archived for the future. If you publish something on the Steam Workshop, yeah, we saw with Counter-Strike Go how quickly this all goes down the drain. It's, yeah, no longer really playable.
That's true. And I mean, and I don't mean to jump ahead of you in the questions. Maybe you were going to ask this later, but I'd also say that, like, that is one of the things that I appreciate the most about Red Faction. How, Red Faction's original developer was Volition. They don't even exist anymore. But even before they no longer existed, since probably late 2001, early 2002, they haven't really had any effect on the game. The community has been running everything to do with this game for many, 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 many years. We're not reliant on, a company with profit margins. We're not reliant on a central server that Ubisoft can decide to take down when they don't want you to play the crew anymore. Like, we're not beholden to any of that. We have the community runs everything. We do it for each other. We do it because, we love the game. We love playing with each other. And, I absolutely love that aspect of it.
I now wonder, do you also host the master servers for the multiplayer side, or is this still their official master servers?
Yeah. No, we host the master server. That's why I was saying earlier, if you go into the Dash or Alpine faction settings and you hit the reset button, it'll set you to our community game tracker, so that you can go to our game tracker and get the list of servers. It's completely separate from the publisher. The publisher hasn't actually run the master server for this game since, I can't remember exactly. I want to say 2011, 2012, something like that. So that's Faction Files that hosts that tracker.
That's good to know. And now, of course, I know what you meant by tracker. I wasn't entirely sure.
Yeah. Master server tracker. It's I use those words interchangeably, but probably most people don't do that. But yeah, the kind of the central server list where when you go to multiplayer, you hit join game, the server list that shows up, that's been hosted by the one that everyone uses anyway has been hosted by Faction Files since 2011, 2012. I can't remember the exact time. Somewhere around there, and that's been the standard game tracker that has been used in the Pure Faction patch back years ago, the Dash Faction patch, the Alpine Faction patch. Yeah, it is the standard tracker. There isn't really anything else.
Yeah, well, thanks for clarifying. I'm really not used to that phrase because in most servers, in most games, it's master server or server list or some different terminology. But yeah, nothing too crazy. And yeah, moving on. You also mentioned that you created custom content quite a lot. I would like now to know from you, what can you recommend? What should I or other new players play for the first time?
I'm not going to say all of my stuff, obviously, because I have a lot of terrible stuff too.
Yeah, that would be.
I've made some stuff that I'm proud of, but I've also made some stuff that looking back on it, not so proud of. But I am very proud of the Kava mod that I created. That is it's a prequel single player campaign for the game. It is loosely inspired by the plot of the Red Faction 1 mobile game, but kind of reimagined as if it were turned into a quote-unquote full Red Faction title. So I would definitely recommend Kava. In terms of other community mods, I mean, Intharth in the chat there made a horror mod called Barracks Horror back a little while ago that is really cool. Another community member, Mystical Acer, made a full port of the campaign from the Engage version of Red Faction, which is very, very well done and very fun to play. In multiplayer maps, I mean, there are way, way, way too many that I could sit here and recommend, so I'm not going to come up with a list. The best thing for that, to be honest, is just come play game night, because most of the good maps we play at game night. So if you're looking to play cool multiplayer maps, game night is probably the best place to be exposed to that, rather than having to sift through like thousands and thousands of files on our website. I will say, multiplayer mods. There have been a lot of cool multiplayer mods made for the game over the years. The Lego multiplayer mod was one that I was involved in with Nick and Natalie as well. That is really cool. It's like a really fast-paced. It's kind of like Challenge Pro Mode Arena from Quake, but like way faster. And of course, everything's Lego themed, so that's pretty cool. There's some other multiplayer mods. There's like a kind of arcade realism pseudo Counter-Strike themed mod called Iron Sun mod that was made a lot of years ago. That is really cool. More recently, there's a like winter Christmas themed snowball throwing mod called Snowed Out 2 that was made. That is also really, really fun. I was just honestly, there's way too many mods and stuff for this game to come up with a concise list. I could literally talk for days about the mods and maps that have been made for this game. There's so much cool stuff. If you are coming into this game new in 2025, you'll probably be here until like 2027 just playing the custom content that is made for this game. Like if you tried to play all of it, it would take years. There's so much.
I love it. I so love it. Especially, you mentioned there is a Christmas-themed mod or a winter-themed mod. I need it. I need that experience. It's so rare to have any game content in that the time of the year, basically.
It is really cool, actually. If you check out my my YouTube channel, you should be able to find a video of it there. We did a Faction Files holiday party back in 2022, 23. So I can't remember the exact year, but something like that, where we all played that mod. And it's a mod that was made by one community developer called Romek, but there are maps in that mod that were made by a lot of different community members. Like I made some maps for it. A lot of other, like, I'll call them veteran mappers, made some maps and contributed them to that mod. So it kind of, it really was a community project. And it was, I don't know, it was really cool to be able to contribute to that. It was a really cool experience. It was really cool to play. And it still is. So, yeah.
I also wonder, are there some classic maps from other games in Red Faction? For example, from Counter-Strike, the map Dust is translated in so many different games. Is this also here the case?
Yes. So the answer to the question of are maps from other games ported into Red Faction is yes. And the follow-up to that is I've probably done half of them.
Yeah.
There is a remake of Dust, not by me, but there is a remake of Dust in Red Faction. There's a remake of Dust 2 in Red Faction. Let's see. I was actually working on a remake of Nuke in Red Faction a bunch of years ago, but I never finished it. Can't think of any others from Counter-Strike that are in Red Faction, but like there are a ton of maps from like Quake and Quake 2 and Quake 3 and Unreal Tournament, even like more obscure games like I personally ported a couple of maps from Cube 2 Sauerbraten and from Assault Cube. And there are a lot of maps from Red Faction 2 that have been ported. There's a couple of maps that have been ported from 13. Yeah, just there are an enormous amount of maps that have been ported from other games in Red Faction. And I don't know, it's kind of interesting every time that, and I'm obviously biased in saying this, but I always love it when, at least in my view, a map that's ported into Red Faction plays better in Red Faction than it did in its source game. That's always really cool for me. Again, I'm probably biased in that, and maybe that no one else would agree with me there, but I think that sometimes, and when I do, I think it's really cool.
No, it's totally, we are on the same page here. I also love stuff like that. And yeah, like somebody in the chat is mentioning, you need Pool Day. It's an amazing, crazy map from Counter-Strike.
I have a vague recollection of playing Pool Day in Red Faction. I don't know what it's called. I think it exists. Like I'll look for that later and see if I can find that. I have a vague recollection of it. Maybe I dreamt it, but I'm pretty sure I didn't. I think there is a version of Pool Day in Red Faction.
Good to know. Good to know. And also good to know that there is so much content that it will keep you busy forever.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I would never recommend anyone to try to, make a quest to play every piece of Red Faction custom content. Both because, there's as much good custom content as there is for the game. There's also a lot of content that is not so good, including some of mine. But there's also just so much, so much. It's wild. I guess that's what happens when you have 25 years.
That's totally true, but if we have the next World War and you are in your bunker for the next 10 years, you need some offline content, and you have it here. It's amazing.
There you go. That's true. You need something to do when, the world all goes to hell, just play Red Faction maps. It'll keep you busy.
Yeah, on the same page, before we started, you mentioned there's also an amazing nude mod for this game. Like every game from that era, it needs a nude patch. And you have it also here, so you have even that.
It's not on faction files. It's not something. First, it's not something I had anything to do with. It's just something that I remember. But there was a nude mod for one of the characters in Red Faction that was made a lot of years ago, and it is absolutely awful. It is so bad. I don't know who made it. I apologize actually, I don't even apologize. If the person who made that is listening to this, your mod is terrible. But that does exist. That is out there.
Well, there's always room for improvement.
I, for one, will not be improving on a nude patch or a nude mod for any of the characters in Red Faction.
Well, in today's age, we have the friendly neighborhood Skynet, who can create everything for you. So maybe there is a hope for the future here.
I don't think that was the intended use of AI, but
For some, at least. But yeah, moving back to something more serious, and you mentioned it a few times, you have a YouTube channel, and there I saw you also do some speedrunning. How did you get into that?
yeah. So I'm gonna give a huge shout out to Mr. Dwayne Jones, who I know Sedaris, you don't know, but he's another one of our admins on Faction Files. Dwayne Jones, we lovingly refer to him as you know, the grandfather of Red Faction speedrunning. So back in 2016, 2017 timeframe, Dwayne Jones came to the Faction Files forums. This was back before we had a Discord. And he said, all right, guys, I want to do a segmented impossible speedrun. Impossible, the hardest difficulty in Red Faction. So we were all just kind of like, you know, hey, that's cool. I don't think anyone's ever done that before. And also, like, to be frank, we all care about the multiplayer. Like, we don't really care about single player. So sure, yeah, we'll give you a hand. And, you know, so we did. And he ended up doing that. And there are plenty of commentary videos actually out there that we did going through his runs, if anybody is curious. Those are, I believe they're all on my YouTube channel. So that's kind of how I got exposed to Red Faction speedrunning. But the community has, specifically the speedrunning community, has evolved a lot since then. You know, I'm not going to say it's the most active speedrun game in the world. Like, obviously, there are much more active speedrun games, but for what it is, it's a relatively active community. It's, you know, it's a fun run to get into. It's relatively welcoming to newcomers. If anybody out there is interested in speedrunning, I'd absolutely recommend it. But yeah, that's kind of Red Faction speedrunning. And I mean, on my YouTube channel, I'll say, you know, I don't really know what I thought my YouTube channel was going to be when I started it, but it kind of turned into, here's some cool stuff that I do in other games, but also here's like a bajillion videos of Red Faction. So yeah, if you care about Red Faction especially, then yeah, you know, you might find some cool content on my YouTube channel.
Before I have a follow-up to the YouTube channel, I also have a question about the speedrunning community. What is currently the best time to beat the game? I played as a noob around 5 hours. I guess that can be a little bit quicker.
Yeah, it definitely can. And if you give me literally half a second here to click on this button. So the current world record for any percent on the easy difficulty in Red Faction was set by WDSS Grant, set just over a year ago. There's actually a commentary video on that on my, pretty sure it's on my channel. Yeah, there's a commentary video on my channel where we go through and commentate the run, but that run just broke the 40-minute mark. So it's 39 minutes, 58 seconds, 370 milliseconds, and that is start to finish the game on easy difficulty.
Not bad, not bad.
So yes, a little bit more, a little bit less than 5 hours, just a little bit.
But was this done without any glitching?
No.
Okay.
It's full of glitching.
Hardcore glitching. I see.
Oh yeah, it is full of glitching. You know, there are other categories that you can look at if you know, out of bounds glitching and stuff doesn't interest you. Like, there's an inbounds category that's on the boards. The record for that is currently about 45 minutes. So, you know, 6 extra minutes to not glitch through walls. You know, is what it is.
Okay, so I guess inbound is the term for you, that it's raw or without anything.
Yeah, we don't really have a glitchless category because it's difficult to nail down exactly what a glitch is in the context of Red Faction. But we do have an inbounds category, which is just, you can't leave the level. Like, you can't, like, go through a wall out through the map and jump around corners out of the map and, you know, jump around triggers because you're not in the level and that sort of thing.
Oh, okay. Yeah, and I also saw something else on your YouTube channel, the mine warfare. It's the first time ever I saw somebody else doing interviews with the community. Of course, interviews with developers, that's standard more or less. But doing this as an archive project, that's really interesting. And yeah, how did this start?
Yeah, so Mine Warfare has gone through, you know, it's gone through a bit of a process. So when we first started it out, Nick and Natalie and Dwayne and I, Dwayne Jones and I, had this idea to produce a feature-length documentary on the, relatively unique history of the Red Faction multiplayer community, because it is relatively unique. And so we set out and started interviewing people and interviewed a ton of people, got some interviews with some developers that worked at Volition. Then we got a bunch of B-roll footage, and then we sat down and started looking through it. And we decided that the most valuable way to approach it, rather than, cutting out stuff and trying to tell a specific narrative with the clips and that sort of stuff, the most valuable thing was to basically have an archive of the history of the community and the game in the words of the people who were there. And so, there's going to be an interview with me posted as part of that series. There's not yet. There have been, I believe, 4 interviews posted in the series so far. More to come soon, TM. That is an active project, and if you're interested in that interview series, I would definitely encourage you to check out that playlist on my YouTube channel. Subscribe to my channel if you want to get updates when they come out. I'm not saying that to build a community. I'm saying that specifically if you want to get updates on Modern Warfare. But if you just want to support me, that's cool too. So yeah, I mean, there will be over the coming months more interviews posted as part of that series. I can't remember the exact number off the top of my head, but like we're just getting started. there are a lot left to be posted.
I really, really prefer that somebody else is doing all this hard work. It's so important for me that gaming history is archived. I mentioned this countless times on this channel. We already lost so much of gaming history. Websites gone, games are gone, everything down the hill basically, and nobody is doing anything about that. It's good to hear a fellow content creator working on that.
Yeah, no, I totally hear you. And I mean, just, for me personally, like, this is a community that I've been involved in for over 20 years. And, I love this community. I love this game. And it occurs to me that, I'm probably not going to be, well, okay. I'm going to say that I'm probably not going to be playing Red Faction when I'm, 50, but, if you had to ask 10-year-old me, they probably wouldn't have said that they'd be playing Red Faction when they were 30, so, we'll see. But, there's so much cool history in this community and in this game that no one outside of the community really knows about. And even people who are in the community, unless they have been in the community for the entire time and have been completely tuned in, they wouldn't even know all of it. And I'm not even saying that I know all of it. Like, there are obviously things that happened in the community, especially years ago when the community was much bigger, that have probably been lost to the sands of time, unless we happen to find someone to come out of the woodwork and tell their story. But yeah, no, it's really important to me to archive as much of this game and this awesome community as possible.
I'm feeling stupid now, but I now wonder, was Red Faction ever included in the file network? That was a map and mods archive or website back in the early 2000s. There were a file front for UT, for Counter-Strike, for Elite Force, for most of the games. Was it always there? Or was it just a coincidence that it sounds similar?
There was a section for Red Faction on FileFront back years and years ago. I can remember browsing it. I can't say this with 100% confidence because obviously I don't have the data in front of me, but based on my usage of the site back then, it's my understanding that virtually all, if not all, of the content that was on FileFront was also elsewhere. So I don't think anything was lost when FileFront went down from a Red Faction perspective. There have been other Red Faction community sites that have gone down as well, like Levels for You was a big one back years ago, and thankfully the person who ran that website sent out an archive of the files before the site went down. So, I have a copy of that. Most of those files are on Faction Files, and actually the archive itself, the big dump, is on archive.org. So, like, these things are being archived as much as we can, but FileFront, as far as I'm aware, we didn't lose anything Red Faction related when that went down.
That's very good to hear, because I know a lot of game communities which lost a ton of work.
I would say, yeah, it can be devastating. It can be devastating.
Yeah, I think slowly to an end, I also have to ask maybe a dangerous question here.
This should be fun.
Did you also play the other Red Faction games, and did you enjoy them?
Oh, would it be would it be too much for me to just say yes and move on? No. Yeah. So yes, I've played all of them. My enjoyment level with them varies. I'll just very quickly go through. I mean, there were a lot of Red Faction mobile games. Most of them are crap, like complete crap. I like them because they're Red Faction games, but like they're crap. Red Faction 2, it's a lot of hate. I think I'm being charitable in saying that. I will agree with the hate in that the PC version of it is absolute garbage. The port was very, very, very poorly done. It was missing a lot of what made people, including me, like Red Faction 1. As just a game, like especially a console game, I thought it was okay. But as a Red Faction game, especially on PC, I really didn't. Although I will kind of just add an aside before I go on to the other games that I was I was one of these people when Red Faction 2 came out back in 2002 who was really pissed off that there was no level editor and there was no multiplayer and all this kind of stuff. And I was really pissed about that back then. So were most everyone in the community. And I was for a lot of years. Looking back on it now, I am so happy for that. Because if that game had have been released and it didn't fall flat pretty quickly because it had a multiplayer component or something like that, it would have split the community between Red Faction 1 and Red Faction 2 without question. And that almost certainly, in this hypothetical world, would have led to the community's demise. So looking back on it, I am so happy that Red Faction 2 on PC flopped as hard as it did. So that's just kind of interesting. Red Faction Guerrilla was a ride. It came out in 2009, and at that point, we had all spent, 8 years at that point, waiting for the next, or for the news in the Red Faction series. Because after Red Faction 2 was not particularly well received, the series kind of died. And it was always an open question. Like, there were always these rumors about Red Faction 3 and what it was going to be, and, were they working on it? Were they not? And then when they announced it, I was cautiously optimistic. But then I learned that it was third person, and my optimism went down. And as I started learning more and more about it, my optimism for the story went up, and I still do think it was a pretty cool story. But as a game, I don't really like it. I like the multiplayer. We play multiplayer Red Faction Guerrilla game nights every Friday night on our Discord as well, so that's fun. But it's a very, very, very different game to Red Faction 1. It didn't have, any of what made Red Faction 1 have staying power for me. I mean, maybe I'm being a little reductive in saying this, but it's basically Grand Theft Auto on Mars. It's the same basic gameplay. So, yeah, not a huge fan of it on the whole. The story's kind of cool though. Armageddon, probably an unpopular opinion, but in a lot of ways, I liked Armageddon more than Red Faction Guerrilla. At least the single player. The multiplayer was garbage. But what I really didn't like about Red Faction Armageddon, and I know anybody who's talked to me about this topic before knows exactly what I'm about to say, but it really annoys me that in Red Faction Guerrilla, Volition clearly used market research and what they thought was going to make money and decided to shift it to third person, and then came up with the excuse that they did it because they wanted you to be able to see the destruction happening around you, which is a marketing thing. In Red Faction Armageddon, they zoomed the camera so far up to the player so that, the player character takes up half the screen, and it's all underground in cramped areas anyway. So even the what they said was the motivation to shift it to third person doesn't apply there. I have no idea why Red Faction Armageddon was third person. It definitely wasn't for gameplay reasons. If that game was first person, it would have been so much better in my opinion. There is actually a first person mod that, outside of the fact that the mod is a little janky, the game is a lot more fun to me anyway. So that's kind of my thoughts on Red Faction Armageddon. But I will just kind of end with this. As neat as the other games in the series were in their own right, none of them had the kind of staying power for me or for a lot of other people as the first game in the series did. They didn't recreate that formula. I'm not even sure they tried, but they definitely didn't do it.
Did they at least continue the story, or was this entirely dropped like in Far Cry, for example?
I mean, so Red Faction 2 is very loosely connected to Red Faction 1. Very, very, very loosely. Like, it's essentially, hey, all this stuff that was going on Mars, yeah, they brought it to Earth, and now stuff's happening on Earth because of it. Like, that's basically the connection for Red Faction 1, Red Faction 2. Now, Red Faction 3, Red Faction Guerrilla, is more of a direct sequel to Red Faction 1. Like, it does take place on Mars again, like Red Faction 1. And I hope I'm not spoiling anything here. Red Faction is 25 years old, but at the end of Red Faction, the Earth Defense Force comes in to rescue everybody. And then in Red Faction Guerrilla, flash forward, the Earth Defense Force is now basically an occupying military force, and you're fighting against the people who were your saviors at the end of Red Faction 1. So it does continue the story in that way, and like there are a handful of locations that you visit in Red Faction Guerrilla that are like, dilapidated 50-year in the future versions of locations in Red Faction 1. There are a couple of other minor links in the story. So, like, yes, it does continue that story, and so does Red Faction Armageddon, but Red Faction 2 is very loosely linked at best.
And I guess none of them ever reached the community level of Red Faction 1, at least on the modding side.
So, I mean, I'll talk to the PC modding side because I was never really involved in console communities, so I can't really speak to that. But Red Faction 2 didn't really have a community. Like, the little community that it had, because it was, released so soon after Red Faction 1, and it flopped so hard on PC, it didn't really have its own community. There were people in the Red Faction 1 community who played Red Faction 2 and talked about it, but that's it. It didn't really have its own community on PC. Red Faction Guerrilla did. I don't know that it was ever as large at any point as Red Faction was at a similar time in its lifetime. Red Faction 1 has, even in the times where the activity in the community was at an all-time low, like, it still had some activity. Red Faction Guerrilla has had some activity lately. There's been a lot of great work that a lot of great community developers on our Discord are doing right now in, reverse engineering file formats and creating editing tools and that sort of stuff. So, like, the future of Red Faction Guerrilla, I think, is very bright. But it also flopped pretty hard, shortly after its release, at least on PC. Oh, yes, I have to point out, because Intharth reminded me in the chat, I didn't mention Red Faction Origins. Red Faction Origins, for anybody who doesn't know, is a movie created by the Sci-Fi Channel as a prequel to Red Faction Armageddon. And based on that description, I'm sure you can imagine how good it is. I will leave it at that.
So it's the same culture level, or the cult classic as Far Cry, the movie? That was also an amazing product.
I never saw Far Cry the movie, but based on that description, I'm going to agree with you.
I only saw the trailer and I had enough.
Fair enough. I watched the Red Faction movie because I kind of had to, unless somebody is feeling like some pain some night. I'm not sure I'd recommend it to anyone else.
So you don't have movie nights in the community?
We did actually have a movie night once where we watched that movie, yeah, we commiserated together and enjoyed collectively how terrible it was.
Since we're in the topic of sacrilegious, I also have to ask you, what annoys you in the original Red Faction? Is it all sunshine and you are always amazed by the product, or is there a dark side?
Well, I'll be cheeky and say that the thing that annoys me most about the game is that not more people know about it. So hopefully over time we're changing that. But no, I mean, every now and again we definitely do run into, oddities where we're all just like, why the hell did Volition ever do it this way? And, those things can be annoying, but any game or piece of software, especially one built, 25 years ago, has those sorts of issues. I mean, like I said, I've been working on Alpine Faction recently, and I've found more of those things through this process than I ever knew about before. Like, instances where, like, built into the game's code is like, this trigger works differently if loaded on this map. And it's like, guys, like, what are you doing? So, some of those things are a bit annoying, but, for the most part, those don't really get in the way of what makes Red Faction great. And, like I've said before, this game has been basically under the care of the community since very, very, very early in its lifetime, probably like 2002, 2003, effectively. And we've just kind of come up with ways to deal with those issues as a community. There have been many developers that have, developed tools for this game. Rafal doing a lot of them. There have been a lot of people who have assisted with researching and, experimenting with stuff to see what works, see what doesn't, to write documentation. Like, together we've made up for and overcome these weird issues. But yeah, there are still some of those things that come up every now and again. You're just like, that's really annoying.
And switching now finally back from the dark side of the game, of the franchise, I guess you have a few favorite memories of the game. Can you share a little bit?
Yeah, more than a few. So I guess I will talk specifically about 4 things. So for starters, when I started playing the game, like I said, September 2001, September, October 2001, up until, I'm going to say 2003, 2004, I had a clan that I ran back then. And, I was really young, so I didn't really know what I was doing, but that was really fun. I had, my dad was in that, a bunch of people I knew in real life were in that, and I also met a lot of people online through that, some of whom I still talk to today. And so that was really, really cool, and it in some ways, I'm sure some people would not be a fan of this, but in a lot of ways, the Red Faction community was a way for me to kind of grow up, and it was interesting. It was very interesting. So I will always cherish that that time in Red Faction's lifespan and in my life. I'll also point out in 2007, 2008 area, I met Natalie and Nick, who are the ones we started Faction Files together. We also worked on a bunch of other projects before that and since that, and we still do today. Meeting them back then, before we all had, day jobs and when we could work on projects all the time, and we worked on so many things. That's a really special time in the game's history for me. I guess more recently, I would talk about, the pandemic era and the Discord and Red Faction Game Night, which we've already talked about, and I won't belabor those again, but that's also really, really cool. And, honestly, I'm really encouraged by what's happening now. The community, there was always kind of a worry, at least in my mind, coming out of the pandemic, it feels really ugly to talk about it this way, but like the pandemic era kind of boom for Red Faction. Coming out of that, there was always kind of a risk that, the community was going to retreat and go back to its, 2014 levels of inactivity. But that hasn't really happened. It's obviously less than it was during the pandemic, but it's still very active. There's still people developing stuff, most days, or at least most weeks. There's still people working on mods. Mystical Acer actually is one of our community developers. He's currently working on a pretty extensive single-player campaign that he's posting previews of in our Discord regularly. Like, seeing stuff like that is really, really cool. And personally, I'm having a ton of fun working on Alpine Faction over these past couple of months. Like, that has invigorated a sense of motivation in me beyond what I'll say the past even year has had in the game. I'm really encouraged by what the future of this community holds. And maybe that's not really a memory because it's current, but it's going to be a memory someday, and I'm going to look back on it fondly.
Well, like I mentioned in the beginning, it's just great to hear that you have such an amazing community and that you are still working on it personally. That's really nice. But yeah, I would say we come to an end here, and basically I'm now opening the mic to you. Is there anything you would like to add? Anything I missed, basically?
I mean, not really. I mean, obviously, I'd like to, thank you for this opportunity. Thank you for, chatting with me. It's always very important to me to expand visibility for, our little corner of the internet with this game that was made forever ago that we all still love. I would extend an invite to yourself, to stick around, but I would also extend an invite to anybody who may be listening to this. Red Faction, on the whole, it is a very, very welcoming community. It's a really fun game. It's a very approachable game. There's a lot of people who are very passionate about it, and there's new content regularly. I would invite anybody who's interested to participate in our Red Faction Game Night events. They're always a laugh. Hop on our Discord, even if you just want to chat about the game, or hell, if you just want to chat about anything else. But especially if you want to chat about, Red Faction, competitive play, casual play, the universe in general, speedrunning, making maps, making weapon skins, whatever you're interested in. I'd extend an invite to anybody who, if anything that I've talked about to do with Red Faction today has, piqued your interest, I definitely extend an invite to you to stop by.
I will definitely follow that invite, and I can't wait to talk to you in the future again and play some rounds also. But how bad is it for a European player to play on a US server? On some shooters, it's not that much of a problem. In some shooters, it's definitely a no-go.
Right. Yeah, it would obviously be better if you were closer to the server. I'm not gonna sit here and say that the experience on 150 ms ping is going to be as smooth that it would be on 30 ms ping. But in general, Red Faction is a game that is very forgiving for high ping players. Counter-Strike, you can't play Counter-Strike against people if you have 200 ping. You just can't. It just doesn't work. Red Faction does. The game was built during a time where dial-up was very common, so it had to be very playable even when network conditions were not ideal, and that holds through to the present day. If you're trying to play a competitive duel or something and you have 200 ms ping more than your opponent, that's probably going to be a bit of a problem. But for game night or just general pub play or whatever, it's completely manageable. It is definitely better than the vast majority of games out there.
That's really good to hear. And yeah, like you mentioned, rare. Many games don't support it in the FPS genre.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. And I'll also mention that, there are, of the active servers that are online, there are North American servers and there are European servers. If you want to play in a European server, there are European servers you can play in.
And how active are they? Is there also a game night on that side of the planet?
So we only do one game night because we did it at a time of day that is accessible to basically everyone around the world. I'm sorry, Australia. But outside of Australia, it's accessible to basically everyone. And we don't really have the numbers consistently to support regional game nights. So we just do one game night. Game night is usually hosted East Coast North America. It's in New York. We have done game nights that are hosted in Europe, and we probably will again in the future. But as a standard, it's based out of New York.
Well, if it's on a weekend, it's still doable. And
yeah, absolutely. It's every second Saturday. Now there was one this past Saturday, so it's not this Saturday coming up, but it'll be 7 days after this coming Saturday, and then every 2 weeks after that.
Well, definitely something I will write down.
That's awesome.
But yeah, I would say that's it for this video. Leave us a comment, tell us what you think about the game, and of course, play the game. Until next time, bye bye.
Thanks everyone.